I thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to join with me today in this next important step in our journey to a real revitalization of our faith community here in Western Massachusetts. Before I get into the crux of my comments, I want to start by thanking Father Matt Alkenbright and his parish staff for hosting this gathering today. My thanks go out as well to our planning committee for their work in organizing the day. I'd like to have them be recognized again. So if they stand up, but I know, Gina, you can't stand up, so raise your hand. Father Matt Alkenbright, Catherine Buckley-Bronner, Gina Cherwinski, Mark DuPont, Melissa Hurst, Deacon Pedro Rivera, and Father Michael Wood. So if you could just either raise your hands or stand up, thank you. They will be available throughout our day to assist and to answer any questions. My thanks as well to our support staff members, Stacy DeBurn from my office, along with Jacqueline Luna, Barbie Bagley, and Liz Gowland for all of their help for today. They helped to register you at the door. Finally, my sincere thanks to your pastors for sending you here today. I promise that we will make good use of your time. Hopefully you had preliminary discussions in the first half hour. So let's begin. Truthfully, who among us is not concerned about the future of our church? We need only to look around at attendance at weekend masses to understand the situation we find ourselves in, almost 2 decades into the 21st century, and it's sobering at best. Like many other dioceses, here in Western Massachusetts, that downward trend has led to parish closings and consolidations, as well as a diminishment in the number of Catholic schools. Though necessary, each decision left us with feelings of pain and loss, and a sense that all we had strived for was slipping away, and in all honesty, even furthered our decline. Even in our largest and most active parishes, there is a sense of loss. In far too many ways, the church and society have grown apart. It's a situation complicated by many factors that clearly represent an historic challenge, one recognized by our Holy Father, Pope Francis, and certainly by the bishops of the church. With all that in mind, the bishops of the United States convened a convocation of Catholic leaders from across our nation to examine this great challenge in light of Pope Francis' 2003 Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel, Pope Francis' first apostolic exhortation. Pope Francis began that most important and enlightening document with this statement: "The joy of the gospel fills the hearts and lives of all those who encounter Jesus. Those who accept his offer of salvation are set free from sin, from sorrow, inner emptiness, and loneliness. With Christ, joy is constantly born anew." In this exhortation, I wish to encourage the Christian faithful to embark upon a new chapter of evangelization marked by this joy, while pointing out new paths for the church's journey in years to come. Let me repeat for emphasis that final sentence. In this exhortation, I wish to encourage the Christian faithful to embark upon a new chapter of evangelization marked by this joy, while pointing out new paths for the church's journey in years to come. Note the word, new paths. I encourage all Catholics to take the time to read this papal writing, the Holy Father continues, as it offers us a roadmap for us to reestablish our faith commitment. In making this observation on the church's journey, the Holy Father does not intend to do away with church practices and traditions, nor relegate them to some lesser importance. Rather, his challenge to the universal church is how to bring new life and new meaning to the richness of our Catholic faith. That which we celebrate in our worship must be brought to life in the whole of our communities. We cannot nor should not depend on the past to lead us into the future. Rather, we should be open to the ever-present guidance of the Holy Spirit. So with this in mind, I, along with a delegation from our diocese, spent last year's 4th of July holiday, along with some 3,500 other Catholic leaders from across the United States, in what was informative, inspirational, but mostly meant as an impetus for each diocesan delegation to bring back to their communities a call for change and renewal. Now, it's not my intention to give you an exhaustive rendition of everything that was said last July. It was a lot to take in over the 4 days that we met. However, let me share 2 observations from the first major plenary session at the Convocation on the changing landscape of our church. Jesuit Father Thomas Gaunt, Executive Director of the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate at Georgetown University, said that the center's researchers have identified as many as 1/3 of the country's 75 million self-identified Catholics are not connected with the church. That's 1/3, 25 million. He said the resulting question focuses on why people who may not be connected with the church still consider themselves as Catholic. And he suggested that they represent an untapped resource for the church. How do we reinvite and re-engage them once more, he asked. In that same presentation, Hafsman Ospino, Associate Professor of Theology and Religious Education at Boston College, said the changes in the landscape are a sign of strength and present new opportunities. It's okay if we wrestle with diversity and pluralism, he told us. This where we need to exercise the pastoral practice of mutual accompaniment. He suggested that Catholics of the first decades of the 21st century might begin to understand that they can set the course of a new Catholic movement in the United States by embracing this diversity. Citing the explosive growth of Catholic communities in the American South and West, Ospino said that the church is being called to respond to the needs of new immigrants so that they are welcomed and not made to feel as though they are forgotten. He went on to cite statistics that show half of U.S. church members today are non-European, with about 40% Latino, 5% Asian and Pacific Islanders, 4% African American, and 1% Native American. The numbers contrast with the population of 50 years ago, when 80 to 85% of Catholics were of European descent. And this trend is very apparent here in our own Diocese of Springfield. Throughout the Convocation, we discerned our circumstances and our possibilities. Our mandate was to head home and to continue this process on a local level, to find ways that our rich sacramental life can propel us, bringing our faith to those in the margins, to be church both within and outside the walls of our sacred places of worship. After examining various models, we settled on a process recently utilized by the Diocese of Bridgeport in preparation for their diocesan synod, a process which included regional listening sessions. So beginning back on February 20th in Greenfield and continuing late into April, I attended 10 listening sessions, including one that was part of the Encuentro process, which is a national discernment process involving Catholic Latinos. Each session followed the same pattern. Many of you were there, and I thank you for attendance at either one or many of the listening sessions. And each session asked 3 fundamental questions about the Catholic community here in the Diocese of Springfield. And those questions were, what is the church doing well? What is the church doing that needs improvement? And what should the church be doing? Now, I should make note that beyond an abundance of thoughtful replies to these 3 questions, I came away with 2 overarching observations. First, there was across the board a genuine expression of gratitude that we were taking the time to listen. In many instances, it was among the first comments that were made. I think there is something very instructive in this honest reaction. Whether on the diocesan or parish level, we spend a great deal of energy trying to create opportunities to better connect with the faithful. Yet, how often do we simply provide an opportunity to listen, to genuinely hear what our parishioners have to say, the good, the bad, and the sometimes difficult? The act of sincerely listening is in fact a form of pastoral ministry. The benefit of being better dialogue and stronger relations with the faith community. I'll be very honest with you, it wasn't always easy. Having started in Lent, I thought the planning committee had set me up to do a form of extended Lenten penance, one that even lasted into Eastertide. There were a few times when I would have liked to have leapt to my feet in response, but I sat and listened. And what I heard was an abundance of observances and suggestions, all honest reflections formed within an enduring love for the Catholic faith that we share. These 2 reactions, gratitude for being heard and enduring love for what we share, must form the foundation of our efforts as we go forward. And I'm hopeful both will be evident today as we continue the process of discerning. I hope the discussions which take place after lunch, where hopefully everyone will be fed, will be accented by openness to the observation of others and a shared love for our faith. So what we did learn, quite a bit. Some, of course, one might have expected. But most of what I heard showed a great investment by our parishioners into our long-term well-being and a heartfelt concern for our future. In the broadest terms, themes of open communication and mutual cooperation, greater and enhanced spiritual life, and bringing our values out of our churches and into society to be true living examples of our Catholic faith in action. Since the final listening session in late April, we even had one with the deacons up till last Saturday, the planning committee called through the many responses, connecting common recommendations into 8 themes. These are not action steps, rather compasses, pointing the way to renewal. Clearly, any theme that we undertake will involve many practical steps. But for now, we're just seeking direction on how best to utilize our resources and our time. These themes will be the focus of your small group discussions after lunch. Let me review them, and I will note that they are not listed in any order of importance. Theme A, to create, build community within parishes. This theme recognizes the unique importance of the local parish into the overall success of our universal church. How can we create more and welcoming parish communities? Asking and seeking out those who are not with us. Truly opening our doors and being prepared to listen. To take a closer look in the mirror at how we can become more Christ-like in the world. Theme B, youth and young adults. In some ways, this theme dovetails off of the first. But here, there is recognition that doing a better job staying connected with our younger brothers and sisters is one shared both within the parish and as a broader-based diocesan effort. We need to intentionally invite and engage young adults. I think there is a wide consensus around this theme. Yet my sense is working with youth can seem to be a daunting task, but a critical one. I think up till now, I've done 45 parish visits of our 80 parishes in the Diocese of Springfield. And youth and young adults and how to get them involved has been the theme of each one, a concern that was raised in different venues, whether it came from parish staffs or from parishioners, from pastoral council members, but that topic has been raised in every parish visit that I've had so far. Theme C, lifelong faith formation. To be ready to engage and invite others depends on our own awareness and knowledge of our Catholic faith. All too often, for many, the personal faith formation ends with confirmation. As a matter of fact, I remember being pastor of a parish in Baltimore. We had problems with pigeons in the steeple. And we were discussing it at a pastoral council meeting, and one of the men of the pastoral council raised his hand. He said, "Bishop," he said, "I know how to get rid of those pigeons." And I said, "How, Dan?" He said, "Confirm them." Well, we can all resonate with that story in one way or another, but it's not a happy story. I think many would concede their overall knowledge of their faith is perhaps less than adequate. Adopting such a goal would mean we are committing ourselves to a model of lifelong learning about our faith. This means not just being able to quote from the Bible, but rather to apply what we read and what we know of the Church's teachings in living in our world. Theme D, spirituality. To bring our faith to those in the margins first requires a solid starting point. I can share with you that across our diocese there's a great concern and desire to revitalize our spiritual practices. Many who convert or return to our faith make note that these transcending practices and traditions are a strength, drawing people in. This goal would seek to encourage more awareness of and appreciation for the breadth and depth of Catholic spiritual practices. Theme E, diocesan and parish relationships. I visit many dioceses and spoken with even more bishops, and can tell you that universally there is a disconnect, even friction, in the relationship between diocesan central ministry and the parishes where Catholic faith life is lived out. This broad-based objective is to establish a more open and inclusive diocesan way of doing business, one that listens to the advice and concerns of parishioners, engaging them in dialogue, and inviting them into participation in the decision-making process. This objective is to see ourselves working in harmony with full mutual cooperation. Theme F, cultural integration. As I mentioned previously, we learned that the National Convocation, the changing face of the Catholic Church in America. I am sure that comes as no surprise to us here in the Diocese of Springfield, where we have welcomed our Latino brothers and sisters going back more than 5 decades. The Catholic Latino community here in Western Massachusetts is a dynamic one, as is our Southeast Asian community, along with other groups. But because of our cultural and language differences, the wider church does not enjoy the full benefit of this diversity. The goal of this theme would be to develop across the diocese practices, programs, and worship that are intergenerational and integrates cultural diversity. Theme G, Catholic schools. Earlier this year, I initiated a review of Catholic schools. We all understand the important role of Catholic schools that have played in the development of our church here in our United States and in our diocese, not to mention how they have benefited the greater community. But here also, we have faced tremendous challenges. This theme would call for a discernment of the value, structure, and support for the Catholic school education here in the Diocese of Springfield. This theme would be consistent with current ongoing review of Catholic schools undertaken earlier this year. Theme H, clergy formation and support. The final theme you will be asked to consider looks to integrate ways into which all of us can create avenues for continuing formation and support for our clergy and our vocation efforts. Supporting those who minister to us is an important objective. The importance of the role of the parish priest and how they minister in the local community was a theme that came up often. Later this year, our priest will gather for a convocation over a year in the planning that will provide a forum for them to discuss the challenges that they face. As with the previous theme, this goal should be advanced as it would incorporate what comes forward from the priest convocation. So there you have it. These represent a consensus of what we heard at these listening sessions. In just a minute, Gina Cherwinski will provide some guidance for how we will proceed. No doubt there is merit and value to all of these themes. But if we are to be successful, we need to refine our focus and identify themes that will enjoy the widest support and bring the most meaningful change. Finally, in reviewing these themes, also consider practical suggestions on how we might implement these goals. I must say that I enjoyed all the listening sessions, but one in particular was particularly enlightening because many who attended just didn't express their concerns, but they also expressed very solid solutions. What is most important is that whatever path we should walk, we should do so together. I thank you for your presence here today, for your attention, and for the further discussions that we will have through the day. So Gina, I invite you to lead us in our next segment of our discussion and how we will proceed. Thank you.